One's ready. One's ready. Go!
Hey everybody, welcome back to the One's Ready podcast. Before we hop into this next episode with Lieutenant Colonel Brandon Temple, who's a TACP officer, I want you guys to check out 18afitness.com. Coach Edgerton has been in the game for a long time, not only as a strength and conditioning coach at Air Force Special Warfare in the pipeline, but also he was a Green Beret officer and a Green Beret, enlisted Green Beret dude. So he has been in the game for quite some time, knows exactly what he's talking about, and he will take your current fitness level, where you need your fitness level to be, and how much time you have, and he will tailor make a plan, a training regime for you. And he is responsive if you have questions about, like, hey, I don't have this piece of equipment, or I'm feeling this way, or something like that. He's monitoring you, and he can give you a substitution for that. So use the promo code, the number one, ready, to get yourself a discount and a tailor-made plan for you from Coach Edge. Now, enjoy this episode with Lieutenant Colonel Brandon Temple. He, man, there were some good jokes in there. So hopefully you catch them. There was also some, Civil War accents and all that kind of stuff. So it's good. I don't think we've ever had that on this podcast, so I'll take it.
Something for everybody, baby.
That's
Make
right.
sure to go over. So at the end of the podcast, Brandon's going to talk about 2 nonprofits that he's involved in. So please go check out Hunter 7 Foundation. You know him, you love him. We've had him here on the podcast before. So shout out to everybody working over at Hunter 7. And then check out the Moral Compass Federation. It's for moral injury, and he's going to explain exactly what that is. But you can check them out at moralcompassfederation.org. You can find Hunter 7 at hunter7foundation.org. Make sure to check those 2 out. Consider donating if you can. They're doing great work for veterans causes. Brandon heavily involved in both of them. So Hunter 7 Foundation, Moral Compass Federation.
Absolutely.
Get ready for a bunch of name dropping.
All right, enjoy.
Don't say you guys. I didn't have anything to do with this scheduling. I saw the schedule pop up. I was here on time, on target. Do not shame me over the guest selection. This one is all peaches.
Didn't you just recently have a lieutenant colonel on from the combat control school?
Hey.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, but you know what? We don't need your input in this either, sir. Okay? We're trying to handle some team business right now. This is some enlisted talk going on where we're shaming peaches for
There's
being
a list
peaches.
of people in here, y'all.
There's a list. Oh, how'd your buddy?
10 years prior enlisted, so I get it.
That's
All
right.
right, you're a Mustang. I'll take it.
You're all right.
Everybody, welcome back to the One's Ready podcast. You're at the team room. Obviously, we've got Trent, Aaron, and I, and then we have what I recently learned that you're actually still active duty. I had no idea because I thought you retired. Lieutenant Colonel Brandon Temple. Appreciate you joining us, sir.
Yeah, happy to be here. Good to see you guys.
And a little Mustang action for you, because you were an enlisted dude, a sweaty, if you will, for 10 years. Just sweating all over the place.
That's right. It's still my greatest moments of service, I think, are still in that 10 years. Honestly, love it.
Well, how did you end up? Did you always want to join the Air Force, or did you kind of fall into it?
No, actually, much like one of your previous guests, the one we were just talking about, I wanted to be a ball player. And I realized going into my senior year that, that could be, there could be some problems with that route. So I wanted to have a backup plan. But my senior year, I really lost the focus on being an athlete. I had like 2 classes, and I was really focused in on being a senior and partying and all the wrong things. And I lost focus and had my worst year of baseball ever, my senior year, which is critical. But I have a service history in my family going back to the Revolutionary War, and the military was something that I always was thinking about, but really didn't know what I wanted to do. I was 17 when I first signed on the dotted line, and my parents had to sign with me, and they said they'd only sign for Air Force. They wanted to keep me safe, is what the rationale was. And my dad was a reservist at the time. He's a Vietnam vet on the Air Force side. So that's what they thought was the best thing for me. I didn't really know much else besides, growing up in a military type family where I watched a lot of documentaries on Vietnam and World War II, et cetera. So I went in really not knowing a whole lot. Actually, I went in open general when I went to basic.
Nice.
That's
Roll
a
those
terrifying
dice.
move. Yeah.
Roll those dice, baby.
Think about it today. Like the guys who sign up for AFSPECWAR can go on, and there's these really cool videos and They can see all these things happening, like all the information's in front of you. When I went to my recruiter, it was this giant binder. This is 1999. So this is giant binder of, thousands of jobs that you're literally just in protective sheets. You're just going one by one.
And they had military descriptions, like
exactly.
It wasn't even like in plain language. It was like the military descriptions of the guy. Like, this is the mission statement of a special mission aviator. They didn't even call it that.
That's right. And I'm 17, just thumbing through this thing. Like, I don't know what any of this says. I don't know what it is. And of course, the recruiter's like, well, you can figure that out when you get there. We'll help you. Here's this open general thing. You have a great ASVAB score, so you can qualify for so much stuff.
They're so helpful.
Oh,
they were such nice people.
He was great. Like this, we're really going to take care of you because, uncertainty is not something that we're going to frown upon. We're going to help you out. So
the world is your oyster. Just go in open general. You'll have some talks at basic training. They're going to sit you down. They're going to have really, really transparent talks about what job is the best. Security forces, maintenance, obviously should be your top two here.
It's funny about that.
No shade on maintenance.
No shade on maintenance.
It's the foundation of the Air Force. They're the best.
Yeah, by the way.
No, I agree with that wholeheartedly. But you mentioned security forces, and that's what ended up being on my on my job when I first got my orders. But luckily, AFSPECWAR wasn't a thing back then. But the TACP recruiter came out week 5, so they came out really late. They're supposed to come out week 2. I came to find out later.
TACPs.
Combat controlled, and PJ didn't show up. I don't remember getting briefs from them at all. But the TACP guy came in at week 5, and I was an athlete and wanted to maintain physical fitness. And they did show a video. It might have been on a projector. I'm not sure.
It was on the big TV, baby. I got that same thing. They wheeled in. The TV had like a ratchet strap on it. It was 100%.
It was like it was a rainy day in elementary school. And
right.
They brought in
to watch movies.
They had this TV, and they showed an explosion or two, and this guy parachuting, and I thought, hey, that's pretty cool. Maybe I'll try that out. And so I did whatever little assessment he did for me there. It's like push-ups, sit-ups, pull-ups, I think. Maybe they made me run somewhere. And we walked down to the job office. The guy's like, hey, give me his orders. This little guy is master sergeant, about 5'2". Handed it to him. Security forces written on. He put a black Sharpie, crossed it out, wrote TACP, slid it back to the lady, and a week later I was off to Hurlburt.
See, that's awesome. That I actually miss those kind of Air Force days, and I talked about this. The combat control school was at Pope Air Force Base when it was an Air Force Base at the time. Same, like right across the street was the 21st Special Tactics Squadron. Guys that would come from other units and didn't want to go be instructors would just they wouldn't sign in at combat control school. They'd PCS, and when they arrived, they go straight to the 21st, and they go, well, we don't have you on our inbound roster. He's like, dude, I don't know what to tell you, man. I'm here to sign in. And they're like, oh, okay, they sign in, process them through the system, and then combat control school is like, dude, where's our guy at? Dude, you're supposed to be over here. He's like, dude, I'm part of the 2-1 now. Sorry, man.
Graduated, homie.
The real reason they used to have retention is guys just wouldn't go where they were supposed to go.
Yeah. Right, yeah. I went to supply. They had a whole cage of gear for me. I had this beret. I don't want to do CCS. That sounds terrible. You guys use CS gas and stuff.
I'm saving you time and money is what I'm doing. Right?
Exactly. Problem solvers.
Exactly. That was it was just real quick. And going into TACP, I really didn't know what that was either. I just saw that video, and there I was off to Hobart.
They're like, do you want to drop napalm? I'm sorry, you brought up Vietnam earlier.
Yeah.
That's for people that aren't tracking. Trent has made a Challenger joke and a napalm joke, and we are like 7 minutes in. He just started off hot. That joke made me laugh so hard I had to mute my mic and walk away from it.
When you think about kids watching the TV in classrooms, it's always like the Challenger thing, and then anyway.
Random Tuesday in 2001. Hey guys, there's some news that you should probably be seeing. Jesus Christ.
So was it surprising when you got there? Like, so you didn't know anything. You ran a little bit. You did some push-ups, sit-ups, pull-ups, and you show up, and they're like, you want to be here, and like, I'm gonna beat you till you quit. And you're like, I don't even know what I'm doing. Like, how does this work?
Yeah, I think for me the big thing was I was a class clown. I was a smart ass, which doesn't bode well for you initially.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like one of those things where you can recognize in people, this guy can fit in, right? But he hasn't earned shit. He's this new guy, so he shouldn't be trying to fit in just yet. And they made me feel that multiple times over. I think at the time I was still like 160 pounds. I was skinny, hadn't put on any man muscle, so it was challenging. But for the guys going through the pipeline, and you guys know this, unless it's a graded event, they're going to get you to the point where you can't do one more push-up.
Oh yeah,
right. And a lot of guys, I think they're thinking, if I don't do one more push-up, I'm going to get marked, or they're going to kick me out, and that's just not the case. They're going to get you to failure, and as long as you keep putting forth an effort, that's all they want to see. You're grunting and your arms are shaking. You're trying to get that last rep out. And but I did struggle a little bit with all that. And I think the thing I struggled with the most is being down there in Florida. I wasn't an outdoors guy growing up. I didn't go camping a lot with my family or walk around in the woods. So when they put us on land nav and night nav, I struggled with that. I actually failed and had to recycle to another class because they're giving this brief about bears and panthers and snakes and alligators. And I'm like, where am I?
This sounds dangerous. Yeah.
This doesn't sound like, and to your point earlier, like this is still the year 2000. And, things are just kind of ran more like just get your azimuth and go.
Yeah.
There's some dudes like on walkie talkies that are, back at the campsite, probably drinking beers.
Oh, yeah.
And you're out there just walking in the woods of, in the swamps of Eglin.
Without GPSs, and they don't have trackers on you.
Dog trackers, no safety, no heat mitigation kit. That stuff didn't exist. They were just like, well, if they die, they die, man. I don't know what to tell you.
They're like, your red lens flashlight, that's what's going to get you out of this mess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Your red lens elbow flashlight is what's going to get you out of here alive. So, yeah, I did struggle with that, but I did find it to be a good time.
Good, yeah. I'm just wondering, for the safety brief, was it bears, panthers, and then Florida man as like the most dangerous thing you could run into out there?
They didn't talk about Florida man. They didn't talk about Ranger students, though. Oh, yeah. I remember that.
Yeah. Out on Crab Island,
like if you get a Ranger student out in the woods and they ask you for food, just give them an MRE. Like, be a good dude.
Yeah, be a good dude. But you're not supposed to tell them where they are in the world. But if you give them a little snack, they'll appreciate it. So
I do remember that. I do remember that for sure.
That is funny. I remember being out there doing land nav, and then you just see some ranger, and you can see it in his face that he's like, "Hey, man,
where am
I?" And you're like, "Dude, you're oh God."
That's right.
And they just turn around and start hauling ass back.
That's not even the same training range. Yeah. I am in danger.
That's right. Yeah, I've strayed away from the path.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Well, yeah. So what? So 99. That means you were kind of at the beginning of all the GWOT stuff.
Yeah, I got to my first operational unit in February of 2001. So, when I got there, it was still a very Gulf War, Cold War mindset. Right, the Cold War had been over for 10 years ish. But we hadn't figured out as a military what we needed to be training for. We were kind of in that in-between period. And everything we were doing was still geared towards fighting the Soviets. And that it didn't even change quickly. 9/11 came along, and we still were fighting that Soviet war for a couple years into that even, as we were getting more into the GWOT and figuring out that we're in a new era of warfare, at least new in the sense that the military hadn't been working on that problem for quite some time.
Yeah.
Which is crazy because, we have entire books written on insurgency and counterinsurgency operations. And there's entire sections of Harvard and Yale and these folks at the military academies that study this stuff. And it's like, oh, we're presented with this new information. Really? There's a book called The Bear Went Over the Mountain that talks about fighting in Afghanistan and all the pitfalls. And we're not going to speed run through that book and get some lessons. Okay, tight. Yeah. Let's just go drop some bombs, folks. So as you kind of went through that transition, when did you start seeing the entire sort of architecture change and orient to the new war?
When you started seeing it in the way so as a TACP, we support the Army maneuver units. And what you started to see was at their training centers, they were trying to create these hasty counterinsurgency models within their training. They put up some like plywood huts, and they started hiring role players. But that took some time to get that infrastructure to build out, to put us into realistic situations, as realistic as we could be. And this is before a lot of the simulator technology was out as well. So there wasn't that option in many cases. So it happened gradually, but, they finally got there. The downfall to that, to your previous point, is, in the military, we get in this real operational tunnel vision anytime we get into a conflict, and we forget everything else that is around us. And as we got into like 2012 or so, I started talking to my guys about, we got to start looking at, more of the near peer type of stuff. We've forgotten. We have a whole generation of folks who don't know how to operate in that environment because we stopped teaching it. To your point, just like we stopped teaching a lot of counterinsurgency really after Vietnam, and just focusing in on that major land battle with the Soviets. I really think we need to diversify that in the future, just because we need to be ready for everything. As we have seen, any one of those scenarios can pop up at any time.
Well, it's such an easy mindset to fall into. Like you see that in like the Air Force and like the regular people. Like I was thinking like, they're like, well, if I have to pick up a gun, then everything has failed. And it's like, like, oh, well, what do we need an F-22 for in Afghanistan, guys? Like, why are we spending all this money? And it's like, well, because Afghanistan isn't going to last forever, hopefully. And it's not the only type of conflict that we're ever going to be in. It's real easy to be short-minded when, you are going over there over and over and over again. And it's easy to forget about all the other things that could happen and are going to happen in the future.
Well, absolutely. And as you saw just recently, I mean, how much time and money and maintenance and flights have we put into the B-2? And how often has it been used operationally? Right? Not very often, but when you needed it and you needed the very particular munition that it can carry to deliver ordnance, it's there for you.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that the B-2s are out there training for this every day, unbeknownst to us. As we're fighting our own wars and going through counterinsurgency, the B-2, they're constantly training for that mission. And as you can see, it's successful when you do that.
Yeah, and we've kind of always been in lag, and I talked about this, I don't know, a week or so ago. The F-22, right, when it was originally designed and the procurement of it, they were looking, it was either 500 or 700 F-22s, right? The whole point was near peer at the time, because that was before GWOT and all that kind of stuff. And then we were going to buy in bulk, Costco style, buy in bulk. It was going to be expensive, but it was going to bring the unit price down. And then it got to the point that when we started GWOT and the cost also rose, and they're like, dude, we're not in a near peer. We're not going to be in a near peer for a while. So let's dial that back. So then they cut it down to like 186 or something like that. And they're starting to do the same thing with the F-35. They're looking at it and going like, well, maybe we don't need as many. Same with the B-21, same with the F-47. They're like, well, we'll kind of maybe dial it back. And you're like, dude, playing a dangerous game, because those things are going to get shot. I mean, they're incredible aircraft, incredible capability, incredible pilots that are flying it. But if we actually do go into a near peer, it's going to be bloody as shit.
Not if it's an F-15, bro. 449 and 0. What's up? That thing's badass, man. Just give me 10 more F-15s. Come on, man.
They're the best.
They are the best.
I think the war in Ukraine is having an effect on that as well. Yeah. I mean, as they're seeing less, people were it was remarkable to people that when Russia first invaded, that there wasn't a heavy use of air power. And what we've seen since that's gone on and they got into this kind of stalemate warfare is, unconventional warfare, drones. It's not high-end equipment that's in that fight, besides, more of the long-range missile technology. And I think it was just yesterday or 2 days ago that the Secretary of Defense made his video about, leading in drone warfare, because I think we see the writing on the wall that we spend billions and billions of dollars on exquisite high-end equipment. And then we're looking at these wars, and then the Houthis and other all over the place, all the way back to ISIS, using a commercial off-the-shelf drone with a mortar on it to be effective. And I think we're slow to come around to that, but I'm sure we'll find a way to spend billions on it as well.
Can't wait. Love those tax dollars. I don't care that we don't have national health care, baby. I want a B-2 to be able to drop a 30,000-pound bomb inside of an air vent, homie. That's America. Give me that Freedom Dorito all day. So You talked about your time as an enlisted TACP, and you said it was some of the best times of your career. During that, what would you spend about 10 years enlisted TACP?
Yeah, it was like 9 years, 8 months. So
Okay.
about 10.
Wow. Good. Yeah, I could have picked that up off the top of my head. I should have known that. Thanks for the show prep, Jared. What were some
10
of
years
those
is a good
things?
round number. It's a good round
Yeah.
number.
There you go.
He knew we were enlisted. He's like, look, I don't want to get into math. 10 years. Like, that's the only thing that they're going to understand.
Well, now I can't wait too. Like you just avoided the Tim Kennedy scenario where you didn't aggrandize yourself and claim that extra 4 months. So good for you, bud. Good job. No Timmy K for you, my dude. So what were some of those best times, man? Like, deployments, I assume that you got your Army appreciation out of those 9 years, 8 months. You saw the bigger LSCO fight that you were involved in. And that's a great perspective from an Air Force dude, right? Like as you crossed over to officer, you had that behind you where you could look and be like, hey guys, this is the bigger picture. And I think that you can kind of hear that when you're talking now, like you really do have an appreciation for the bigger picture. So what was that enlisted time for you like as TACP?
It was great. I think, growing up in a military family, and like I said, my direct line, I think 6th great grandfather marched on Concord. Right, he was in Reading, Massachusetts, on 19 April 1775, and answered the alarm in Captain Eaton's company. This is just something that's.
He wasn't a redcoat, just to be clear. He was
right.
Yeah, red coat.
Clarify which side.
He's a patriot.
Yeah, like if somebody tells me they were in the, I had a grandfather in the Civil War, I'd be like, where'd he live? You know what I mean? Like
he's from Georgia. Like good Georgia boy.
He's a good Virginia man. I was like,
he's like, we'll be fighting in this war. For our
war
rights.
of northern aggression.
What?
Yeah, it's just something that's been a part of my life and part of my family and part of my upbringing. So I say that because I had a romanticized view of warfare. Right, wrong, or indifferent. I think that it's consistent throughout human history, especially amongst men, that there is this romanticization of war and being part of it, and wanting to know how you would act and react in those situations. So I went into it, especially in this job, very enthusiastically, and those experiences have just been so formative throughout the rest of my life and almost everything I do. And I'm glad that I had the opportunity and to do that on deployment. Like, and it's, sometimes it conflicts. Cause like, for instance, I personally don't believe now in hindsight that we should have been in the Iraq war. We shouldn't have invaded Iraq, in my opinion. But I had 5 deployments there, combat deployments, and I'm glad that I did. Even though I don't agree that we should be there. In
it's
hindsight.
a weird thing, isn't it?
It's so hard to explain to people the both of those things. Like there's it's not 2 things being true at once. There's like a pile of things that are all contradictory, that are all true. You're like, oh, we shouldn't have been there. It's the best time of my life. It was also the worst time of my life. It wasn't what I expected, but it's, I came out a totally different person in a lot of good ways and a lot of bad ways all at once. So
Absolutely.
There you go.
Absolutely. I think the best times were the last 5 years of that. I went to, it wasn't as formalized as it is today. I went through an assessment and selection process, I guess you can call it. And, because, I think most of your audience will know that, the predominant mission of TACPs is on the conventional side of the house. But I went to that selection and ended up going to what's now the 17th STS and spent the last, 4.5 years with 275, the 2nd Ranger Battalion up in Washington State. And I mean, those are some of my, like when I see those guys today that I fought with, we hug, we embrace, like we tell each other, I love you. Like, it's such a brotherhood. And I look back fondly on those memories, especially the times that were the worst.
Yeah.
Right.
Like the bank robberies.
That happened while I was there. That happened.
Don't incriminate yourself, dude. You're still in. What are you doing, Colonel? Quit it.
I had nothing to do with it. All right.
I
was
hashtag money bad.
That's
if you
a
see
real
that
nice
2,
house you got there. Yeah.
I'll tell you. You see that 2 inside of that diamond, you better guard them ducats because those boys are coming for them.
Yeah, that's what I love about the Ranger Regiment, man. They're there to do a job, and they do it very well. And the times that sucked were the times that are the best. When you look back on it, the times when I was with 275 when we did the Operation Red Wing rescue. It was my first JTAC deployment with them, and I came in to replace somebody, so I had no training with the Ranger Regiment at all when I showed up there. So it was really learning on the fly. But we went out there for 12. We were supposed to about 12 hours is what we thought. We ended up being out there about 13 days. So we didn't have any cold weather gear, not a lot of equipment, and we're up at altitude 10, 12,000 feet. It's raining, it's hailing. It sucks.
Dude, your weather guy sucked.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Well, he was fine. I think we just didn't prepare for it because, we were only out there 12 hours, what we were told. And it was just the worst. Not to mention, the things that are happening, we have 18 service members on the helicopter that were killed, that we're rummaging through to try to find them. The original SEAL team that was out there. So all that's going on within that context. But when you look back on it, and we were just there for each other, for each other to get through it. And I remember this poor CCT guy came out there with the CSAR team. He didn't have any equipment either. All he has is a space blanket. And by this point, we'd already been airdropped. Some of the guys on the Ranger platoon that was there, some sleeping bags. It was like 3 a.m. We're up on the original contact site that Latrell and the team were at, because we were going down that slope to try to find, any survivors or, recovery. And it's like 3 a.m. and the CCT guy, I don't remember his name. I hear him whisper to me, "Hey, BT, you got any room in that sleeping bag?" And I went, zzz, hop in, cowboy. And he jumped in, and,
dude.
And that's what you do for each other, right? That's what you do. This dude is out there suffering in the cold with a space blanket, and he had, he asked, and of course I'm going to let you in, man.
And I'm going to kiss the homies goodnight.
Yeah,
that's right.
Cuddling is not a
Good
joke.
night.
Like we do cuddle. It's
my favorite quote about that ever is we were in Norway doing some cold weather training with the Norwegians, and this guy was like, "Okay, sometimes you are too cold, but you just leave a note." And everybody was like, "What?" He was like, "Well, if you don't make it, you want to explain why you were in another man's sleeping bag to your family, do you not?" All right, yeah. So leave a note.
Especially if you're frozen together when you're like Big Spoon, Little Spoon.
Exactly.
That's how you want to be found, right?
I was freezing. I needed the sleeping bag. This was completely platonic. Love, Aaron.
Yeah, I love those moments. I love looking back on them. The tough times, the times where, because it gets cliche, and you hear it like in movies like in Black Hawk Down, when that like Hoot says in that movie, when the first bullet flies, all the politics goes out the window, and that's so true. Like you're just out there with the guys on your left and your right, and you're a team, and you're trying to accomplish a mission, and you're doing it together. And I look back on that time of my life. It's just like I said, 4.5 years at the Ranger Regiment. I look back on the time of my life as just one of the best moments, periods of time in my whole life, and it was so formative. It was fantastic.
So first of all, Tommy Case hugged me one time, and it almost killed me. So I don't know how you deal with that kind of stuff. And second of all, like the question is like, so like it was great, right? But it was hard. So what led to this really terrible decision of you ending up commissioning and becoming an officer?
Well, you might have to dig into your research here. I don't know if you all know this. This might be the bombshell, I guess, on this part of it. But I actually commissioned in the Navy.
Whoa,
that's even worse.
It was a
Why would you do that?
Decision than we thought. Yeah.
So I had a degree. I got my degree, my bachelor's in 2008, but my commitment to the Ranger Regiment when I got selected was 4 years, and I wanted to see that commitment through.
Mm-hmm.
There was a lot of people at the time who were telling me, just stop, go. If you want to get commissioned, go get commissioned. But I was, like I said, that was really important to me, that mission and that job, and the fact that I was selected for it, and I wanted to see that through. But by the end of that, we're deploying so often. I got so burnt out on being a JTAC. If I had to do one more direct action mission in Iraq or Afghanistan and plan it, it just wasn't mentally challenging anymore. And I knew that I wanted to get commissioned. I know I wanted to continue to serve. At the time, the TACP officer route I didn't even know about it, but they were about to do a beta testing on it. So about the original 5 TACPs that crossed over.
No shit. Okay.
I didn't get that information till way late when I was already in the process. And so all that to say is that there wasn't an Air Force option that I was looking at doing at the time. And the other part of it is the Air Force takes forever to do things. They are like, we have 3 non-rated boards a year. You're going to learn if you got selected 6-7 months after, then we're going to get you a class date, which could take another months and months. And now, as somebody who's already at 10 years, or 9 years 8 months, I'm like, I want to get this ball rolling. And I started going around and talking to the recruiters, and I talked to the Navy, and they're like, yeah, we can get you a class date like in a few weeks, man, if you want to come on board. And I'm from Southern California, and I thought, I can get out to San Diego. It's a whole new thing. This is something you might identify with as well. As AFSPECWAR, and especially working in a joint environment, mostly with the Army, I never really had a service connection, right? I felt more tied to the special operations community, to the joint world, but, I wasn't a fly, fight, and win, blue-blooded, American airman. I didn't have
introduced yourself like, hey, I'm an airman, like, or like Marines are like, I'm a Marine. No, nobody in the Air Force is like, I'm an airman.
Yeah, Brandon was like, hi, I'm Brandon. Nice to meet you.
Yeah,
that's right. I do war. Do you need somebody that does war? I really like that.
I vaporize people. You're welcome.
Yeah.
And I do like the idea, because working around the Army, especially in the Ranger Regiment, you have a lot of just high speed platoon leaders. We're talking lieutenants and captains who are now general officers. Yep. I mean, my battalion commander at the time was Lieutenant Colonel Carilla, who's now the CENTCOM commander, right? We could talk about this later as well, but on one of those deployments, I met and became friends with Dan Raisin Kane, who's now chairman, right? And he was a lieutenant colonel at the time, and I was a senior. We're talking just phenomenal officers. And on the Army side, these are people who are really proud to be infantry officers. They're really proud to be in the Army. And as you mentioned, the Marines do it better than anybody as far as that service culture. And I thought it would be awesome to be part of something like that, because maritime history and naval history is, I think it's fascinating, and they do have a strong service culture over there. So I was really attracted to that. And yeah, I got commissioned in the Navy in June 2010 and was stationed in San Diego on a guided missile cruiser, USS Bunker Hill. Yeah.
Dude, I had no idea. I did not know that you spent actually some time in the Navy. That's wild. You're right though. The Marines definitely do it best when it comes to service commitment. That totally resonates with me with the whole joint community, and I resonate to SOCOM more than I do the Air Force. It's just, and probably that's because of 25 years of doing it like that. So that's just, it's what I know, it's what I'm comfortable with. But yeah, that's wild. And so how did you then transfer from the Navy, especially as an officer side of the house? Because I imagine there was a commitment, some kind of active duty service commitment associated with that.
So while I was there, I was in the Navy on the ship about 24 months, and it was a trying 24 months. I didn't know I didn't have an understanding of the strategic picture on the Navy, right? I was coming from multiple back-to-back deployments, gone all the time. And I thought maybe since the Navy wasn't fighting the GWOT as we were, that it might be a little different on that ops tempo. No, right? The Navy is a strategic asset, and we can stop all wars right now and for the next 25 years, and the Navy will still be deploying nonstop, right? It's a strategic asset. So the 24 months I was there, I was at sea 17 of them. So it was very, very busy and away from home quite a bit. The main part of the story, though, is that as in that 24 months is when I started getting the word that the TACP officer program, or at the time it was career ALO, was blessed off, and this is going to be a thing. Right. So they're out of beta testing. We're going to make this a career field. And, I just started having these thoughts while I was out at sea, like, this is something that I think I could be helpful to the community. I think I can come back and help build this thing and be there as a lieutenant with experience to help train our next generation of warfighters and lead our next generation of warfighters. The great thing that the Navy does is they put a lot of power in the commanding officer of a ship, the captain of a ship, right? And what I found in my experience is if the captain of the ship signs off on something, they send it up to the personnel, and it's a done deal. The captain of the ship says that this sailor shouldn't be serving. They're a bad sailor. They'll escort him off the ship, and they'll be out of the Navy in 7 days. Right? Like it happens quick. I've seen it. People go off the ship while deployed in the Northern Arabian Sea, flown off to Bahrain, flown back to San Diego, escorted off base.
Damn.
That's awesome.
And
I'm here for that. Let's go.
I am too. And when I became an officer, I had found out that I'm really here for that, because you try to write somebody a letter of reprimand or something, it's like it's a whole legal proceeding. It's crazy. But in that time period, I decided that I wanted to go back over an inter-service transfer, and the inter-service transfer program exists right now. And there's a DODI about it. So DOD instruction. Every service has their own instruction, and anybody can apply for it if they meet that criteria.
Yeah.
The problem is you have to explain it to everybody along the way that it exists.
Right.
And I
That it
actually
exists.
show them the paperwork, and they'll be like, oh, I know that used to exist. Is that still a thing? You're like, son of a...
It's such a militaryism.
That's
Like
a Trent thing, yeah.
It's so hard to explain to somebody that's not in, right? Like, to those that understand it, there's no explanation needed. To those that don't understand it, there's no explanation that will ever suffice, right? And it's one of those things like going to finance. This happens to everybody everywhere. But like, you have to know what reg it is before you go into finance, because they don't know what reg you're talking about. This is the same. It's like the opening. I just changed the way that I approach like a lot of these admin processes about halfway through my career. Is I would literally just get the reg, I would highlight the part that applied to me, and I would go in and I'd be like, here's how we're going to start the conversation. This is in the reg, and I need you to do this for me. And then they would be like, oh, I've never seen this. I don't know if we can. No, we started with, this is a thing that exists, and you're going to do the thing because it's already a thing. Like we sped right past the discovery phase, and now we're in the action phase. And these DODIs, it doesn't shock me at all that you'd have to be like, no, there's totally a DODI that says I can do inter-service transfer.
No, we had, speaking of like NCO mentorship, just a quick offshoot of this. We had an NCO that I grew up with in my first 3 duty stations. We just kind of followed each other. He was a senior NCO, and he was the type of guy that people didn't look to for operational mentorship, right?
What a nice way to say that.
A warfighter, right?
Say that.
You have
that you wouldn't go for warfighting advice. But I'll tell you what, he was an extremely effective senior NCO, is that he understood that better than anybody, how the admin side works. And I remember as a young airman, I wanted to do something. I was like an E3, and he explained this to me. He's like, you get in that reg, you read that AFI, that Air Force instruction, and you'll figure out what you can and can't do. And you'll find exactly what you just said. He's like, you'll find that they don't know what you can and can't do. And of all the things that I disregarded as an E3, I'm glad I took that one on board, because it is just totally been with me my whole career, and I live by it now. So that's the first thing I do when I want to do anything, is I start reading the regs. And I encourage anybody listening, or any young AFSPECWAR airman who's coming up, to do the same. It's such a powerful thing to do, because you'll get told it's a policy. Oh, it's our policy here at MPF that we don't do that. I'm like, well, the AFI says, can you show me your policy? Well, no.
Doesn't matter.
Operating instruction, anything,
Yeah.
Then what are we talking about here? Yeah, Pixar,
exactly.
It didn't happen. These, I say it affectionately, these darn kids, I mean, hundreds of DMs, right? They'll DM us and they'll be like, oh, I went to my recruiter and I wanted to do this thing, and they said they couldn't. And then I asked them why, and they said, well, that's just not the process. And our first answer is, did you ask them to show you? Did you ask them to show you, like, show me that they have a checklist for it if they say it's there? And then it's funny, every once in a while you'll get somebody that's super motivated, and they'll come back, they'll be like, you guys were totally right. I totally could do that, and they just didn't know. And we're like, crazy. Like the waiver
this
question.
montage of them like putting on their detective hat and like
Enhance.
they're like
Enhance.
read the paperwork.
My favorite part about this hypothetical is the recruiters, like they get this guy that they wanted to put in for a different job, and he fought his way into the job that he wanted. He's like, those darn guys at one's ready.
Would have got away with it too. It wasn't for the best kids.
If it wasn't for these kids, like they pull off the mask of the kid trying to get in, and it's Peaches.
I'll get you next time, Peaches.
I'll get you next time. We turn into Skeletor there. I don't care. This episode has something for everybody. There's 9/11 jokes. There's Civil War accents. There's Challenger references. God, this is great.
Yeah.
Well, I think the invention, I guess, of the career ALO or the TACPO, I think was one of the best things for the TACP career field. And the reason why is because before that, and obviously, Brandon, I'm not telling you anything that you don't already know, but there were some good officers
Brandon,
that were
listen
rated
up.
in.
I know you don't know this, but I'm going to tell you about your career field.
I just turned up the volume, so
Hey,
make sure I get
can't
it
help
all.
but notice you don't have something to write on, something to write with. I thought that was a
Green
pretty
note.
Peaches is a
standard.
patch, so he knows.
Yeah,
He'll tell
exactly.
you.
Incredible,
It's not a whiteboard
approachable.
here, all right?
I know you know this, but I'm a weapons school graduate.
yeah.
No, everybody knows.
Yeah.
I actually walk around like this because it's so heavy. I just like,
Just got a natural lean to myself.
yeah.
It's the weight of everybody that came before me, man. I can't help it. It's just a legacy of excellence. I don't know what to tell you.
So you had non-rated and rated pilots that would, or you'd have rated pilots or non-rated officers that would, they do their job in their own community, and then they would step out and do the ALO, the Air Liaison Officer, and essentially be I guess the thing I don't know, I know they used to be commanders in the DOs, but that they also used to be like flight commanders at ASOSs.
Absolutely. They were flight commanders, and at first they were all rated. I think they continue to be rated throughout. I don't think there was any non-rated. But I remember there was controversy because they were, fighter pilots or close air support types, right? And then when I first got to my duty station, like, oh my gosh, we got a bomber pilot coming to be an ALO. Can you believe that? A B-1 guy? What's he know about close air support? And then it was like, we got an AC-130 guy, like not an AC, but like it'd be like, remote pilot, like RPVs, and but mostly rated. But that's right. They'd come down from the cockpit for a couple years, and they do what was called a ground tour. And
and the problem with that too is like when you have somebody that's just doing essentially an additional duty, and I've seen this across dudes that are C-130 pilots that deploy to embassies, and suddenly they're doing like this super secret program that we've got to go through. They're like, oh no, I do this thing. Like, yeah, but you're going back to your other community. You know that there's an end to this. You know that you're renting this space. You're not owning this space. And of course, that doesn't apply to everybody. But when you have somebody that's just doing an additional duty because it looks good for their career or any other number of reasons, those dudes are they're renting. They're not owning. And that held TACP back for a lot of time.
Yeah, and you're right. And there was, just like any other thing, there's a handful of guys that were fantastic. And actually there was lots of rated ALOs who were leading the charge on this to get this thing created because they saw they wanted to invest in the community. The other thing is there was this,
they didn't want to be in that community anymore. They're like, you TACPs boy, these enlisted men are exceptionally, shifty and bear considerable watching. I don't want to have to deal with these knuckleheads anymore.
They only take one sleeping bag for two guys.
Brandon, I did want to ask you, and this is just a total aside, but I'm gonna get the joke in now. Do you think that sleeping with that dude in the sleeping bag is actually what led you to the Navy? You were just looking for like more opportunities for man-on-man love, or?
I heard that the Navy was into hot bunking. And
that was it. You were like, yeah, this is my
I put it on my application. I have experience, combat experience.
You were a shoo-in, like hire this man.
Oh, you guys don't have your combat hot bunking medal? I do.
This wasn't a training scenario, folks. Okay,
this is science
combat.
fiction. It's real life.
Bullets were flying, spooning was going on.
Oh man,
right.
Oh, so ALOs into TACPOs. Sorry, I derailed this.
I think Peaches was still mansplaining this.
But no, you're right. So the long and short of it is we had folks that came down out of the cockpit or out of the bomber for a couple years. And there was this idea or this, thought process that maybe these weren't the best of people we were getting, because obviously the best people are getting that patch that weighs you down, Peaches, right? They're the best of the rated world are going to weapons school and they're continuing to be pilots. They're not coming to be air liaison officers in some obscure air support operations squadron and, some Army base. So that was the process. And like I said, there was hit or miss. We had some really great guys and some great people who helped stand this up, and others who you can tell were not happy that they were there. They weren't happy they were sent there. So
of course,
having people invested in the people they're leading from the get-go is a no-brainer. I'm surprised it took us so long to get to that point.
Yeah. And I don't know if Aaron would agree with this. I think bringing on crows was a good move as well. Because in the past you guys were
Don't make me say good things about crows, Peaches. That's my one line. It's my bugaboo. Bear traps and saying nice things about crows.
Yeah.
No, I agree with you. Like, man, we give crows, deservedly so, a whole bunch of crap, right? But they were necessary, and the guys have done great. I mean, Cabrera, so Jose Cabrera, awesome dude, CA. He just took command of the wing down at DM. He is a vetted Crow wing commander now. I don't know if that's ever happened before. I know we've had like a group commander. Those guys are crushing it. And it's just like everybody else in the entire SOCOM architecture. Like, these guys will crush it in any position, and they can be leaders of all of these AFSCs. And I think the outputs that we've seen from the Crows, of course, we're going to give them crap because they're officers, and pararescue was all enlisted until 2001? I think the first Crow went through in like 99, and then, got his beret in like 2000 or 2001 or something. So of course there's that history and that legacy there. But you look at how far the pararescue career field has come, and TACP is the same way. You couldn't have done it if you didn't have an officer that was leading that charge and that were given the opportunity to go lead in that way, because whether you like it or not, that is the only way that the Air Force will recognize you as a grown-up career field, is when you have a couple guys walking around with birds and stars, and that's how you get the ball forward. So there are good Crows, and there are, the officer contingent for Crows and TACPO was not only needed, but it's been validated. They've done great things.
Absolutely.
That's as nice as I can possibly be.
And Aaron's going to pass out now and like, all right, well, I got to sign off, guys.
Somewhere out there, there's a Crow just with like a single tear. Like, he loved me all along.
The murder of crows out there right now is just like, they felt like it was like in they feel a disturbance in the force, or it was like in Pirates of the Caribbean when the coin hit the water, it was like, and everybody felt it. They're like, I think Aaron was just nice.
Yeah. It's out there now for posterity.
So so obviously you were TACPO for a while, still are a TACPO technically. You did your time after coming back from the Navy, and then you started this, like, I'm guessing it's still the same program that the enlisted guys do, the legislative liaison gig, right?
Yeah. So when I came back as a TACP officer, I did like an operational tour in ASOS, did some stuff. I was at Fort Leavenworth for 2 years doing operational training. And then I went to JSOC staff for 3 years on their current operations staff. Ended up being an aide for General Kane there. And then I went on to be an advisor to General Howell, who was the commanding general of JSOC at the time. During that time is when I was putting in my paperwork for our what we call intermediate development education. So on the enlisted side, it's a little different because you apply for a specific program, which is the Enlisted Legislative Fellowship program. On the officer side, it goes into the larger IDE process where you're a major, you're being considered for this. All majors are considered for it. And, your chain of command gets to rank you and then put those names up, and it goes into the whole funnel, and the Air Force spits out. I think we're one of the lowest as far as sending people in residence. I think we're only like 20% of our majors actually go to school in residence, something like that. So that's the process. And in that process, this is when I was at JSOC doing this, putting in that package, and legislative liaison was what I always wanted to do when I got to this point in my career. So I put that as my number one choice. At the time I was working for General Howell, he put in a good word, and, your past, it really is a meritocracy in your past output and how you've worked in your community. You get ranked and racked and stacked amongst, the General Air Force, and then amongst your development team, which is special warfare, the pilots, you're all ranked together, and they spit out the rank list. And I got on that list and got my first choice, which was legislative fellowship. So I went from Fort Bragg up here to DC in 2021, July 21.
Oh, good time. Good time to be in DC. I'm sure nothing was going on. Well, I do want to kind of focus here. You mentioned that you ended up working with General Kane. You guys had that relationship from before, and he got to see you grow out of that enlisted TACP guy, young senior airman Brandon Temple. And then you end up fast forwarding to where now you're putting in a packet that probably references some time that you worked with the man. Like, how important were those relationships that you built along the way?
Oh, absolutely. You just never know. That's the thing. And you go into I like to go into every interaction with a positive mindset, to be nice to people, to take people where they're at. And it was on a deployment in Iraq that, I was with the platoon operating out of Balad in Iraq, and General Kane was lieutenant colonel at the time, and he was working in the task force headquarters and like the air cell. He wanted to go out on some missions with the Rangers.
Get it. Let's go.
So
sounds dangerous. Could never be me, but good job, sir.
Are you sure?
Oh, we got okay. And so I'm the JTAC with the platoon. So he comes to me and we start talking and developing this out. At the time, I think he was with the. I'm not certain, but I'm pretty sure he was. But we got to talking, and I got him out on some missions. And that's all he wanted to do, and that was everything. And when I got to JSOC, I didn't know he was there. I was a captain now. He was a 1-star, and I go into my first operation sync. I look across the table. We make eye contact, and we're like, "All right," we recognize each other,
head
right?
Nod. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like, hey, I know you.
Yeah,
I slept in
that.
the sleeping bag with you. I just assumed that's what you did with everybody at this point.
Yeah. That's what I do. Exactly. Like when we first got out of the mission and we're just coming out of the helicopter, I just dropped down in the sleeping bag. He's like, "What are you doing?" We're still on infill. I'm like, "Well, infill into the sleeping bag." Yeah.
This is a SEALs halt. Get in this sleeping bag. I told you had to clip into me, sir.
But that relationship was key because, 2 days later, I get a knock on our door in J33, and it's his current aide. And he's like, "Hey, I'm PCSing, and General Kane says you're the new aide." I'm like, "All right." So I'd only been in JSOC, a couple weeks, and now I'm working with him and working for him. So that was all just based off that deployment experience together and helping each other out. And since then we've, he's a friend and mentor, and now he's the chairman.
Pretty good friend and mentor to have. That's a good phone number to have in case you need to text somebody. Hey, bro. So let's talk about the legislative liaison job, and then the job that you're actually doing in DC. We've had TJ Gunnell on before, so TACP chief. He did the job for a long time. But just for the folks that aren't tracking, how important are these types of positions?
They're really important because what the executive branch, right? DOD, Department of Treasury, Education, etc. They're all bureaucracies, right? And bureaucracies all want two things: manpower and money. That's it. They have missions, of course, and they want to conduct their missions, but they all want more money. They all want more manpower. And that's what it comes down to for every one of them. Any bureaucracy in the world, whether it's at your local government or at the federal government, that's what they want. And at the federal level, the way you go about that is through Congress, right? The House and the Senate, each year through appropriations process and the National Defense Authorization Act, they put into law what we're doing as the Department of Defense. And that requires expertise and input coming from the department to Congress. And what the fellowship program does is it creates a professional cadre, both of officer and enlisted, who can speak both languages and help translate that. And as a TACP, that's something we do, intrinsically to who we are, because we translate that air to Army, et cetera. And in same with, pararescue and combat control and special reconnaissance, we're working in a joint environment. So we have to learn how to speak those different languages. And that is exactly why that program exists, is because they want to send people there to get that understanding of how Congress works, and then come back to the services and help the services liaison with Congress to move those processes forward. And it's not a one-way thing. So Congress got caught wind that that some of the fellows weren't getting utilized like they're supposed to. There's a mandatory follow-on utilization tour after you're on the Hill. And some might think, well, Congress wouldn't care about that because they've already got their use out of you. You're free, free staffer. They found out that some of these folks weren't getting used the way they're supposed to after they left the Hill, and they put it in reporting language in the NDAA that the DoD had to tell them why that was happening, because they expect them to go back to the DoD to help the DoD work with Congress. That's what the whole program is for. So the situation would be, I get out of the Hill and, a command opportunity opens up and the Air Force just says, well, needs of the Air Force, I'm going to send you to command. Right. Congress says, well, wait a minute. No, they're a fellow. They need to go back and work in the legislative space in the DoD in some capacity for at least 18 months or so. So very important, because each year it's a scramble for that slice of the pie.
Yeah, and everybody's fighting for it. Like folks don't understand, because of course everybody with us is looking through a soda straw, and they're like, I want to stay on team forever. I want to go out and deploy forever. I never want to do one of these desk jobs. It's almost like a dirty word, especially with our niche of folks that we're talking to. One of the main questions we get is like, well, if I'm an officer, how long do I get to stay on team before I have to do these other jobs? You guys don't understand that how important and how impactful those other jobs can be. And we kind of touched on it with the question about crows and having these TACP officers and the vetted folks that do that. You need people in those discussions and in those rooms to influence the way that your entire career field gets money. You need to be able to influence decisions at the highest level. And the DoD is a huge bureaucratic animal, but the DoD is subservient to Congress, and it's subservient to that executive branch. And you need to have people in those rooms. And how are you going to get an officer into those rooms unless you make him do a DO slot, probably before he's ready for it or before he wants to do it? And then you got to get him to command and get him to these schools. And there's a whole progression. But the outputs that you see from those positions are just unbelievably impactful to all of these career fields. Have there been any times with you where you got out of a discussion, you're like, holy crap, I just changed the direction of TACP?
Well, at the time I was up there, it might have been for the bad, actually, because that was
perfect.
That's when they were going through the 50% reduction, right?
Oh yeah,
I was up on the Hill for that, and there was not a lot of feedback on the active duty side, because here's another tidbit: the Guard can operate a little bit differently than the DoD. I mean, they could actually, in some senses, lobby, and that's those members of Congress have direct lines to their National Guard folks back in the state, because they kind of they work for the governor and they work for the federal government. When federalized, it's a different relationship. So most of the pushback we got during that time frame was from the members of Congress who have Guard units, TACP Guard units in their districts. That they didn't win that fight, but I think there's ways you can shape this, and it helps. Like when we had that meeting, how Peaches and I met was in a meeting with a member of Congress focused solely on AFSPECWAR. I think there's not only in the Air Force and the Joint Force, but also obviously at the congressional level, there's a lack of knowledge on AFSPECWAR and the capabilities that AFSPECWAR brings to the table. Right? It's something that's been there forever, because we're such a small niche piece of the Air Force and the broader Joint Force. So it's those types of interactions that I think move the ball along. At the end of the day, we had a bunch of folks from the Florida contingent. Gates was there. AFSOC was in his district, and we're talking about AFSPECWAR issues and making that awareness out there. So definitely helpful in that sense, that education piece. Even if you're not getting $1 at the end of the day, the education goes a long way.
Yeah, and again, it's those relationships. It's that Matt Gates knows your face. You can go to Matt Gates for something down the road and go, hey, we had a valuable conversation on this before, but let me talk to you about this new thing that's going on. And you automatically have that shorthand. And that's what's so important, to have a TACP officer be able to go to a sitting member of Congress and go, hey, we know each other. We have a relationship. I need your help on this. That is extremely valuable.
The other value piece to that is not just the member of Congress. It's the staff.
Yeah,
it's the other staffers on the Hill, because members of Congress focus on so many different things. Most of the work is being done by the staffers, and those staffers hop from office to office, and they move up into committees. So they'll go from like Gates's office to the Armed Services Committee to the Judiciary Committee, and they stay there. These are people who are going to operate on the Hill probably for their whole lives, going back and forth between public and private sector. So like a lobbyist or something like that, then back to committee. Those relationships are they're so fruitful because they're always going to be there, and you can dial them up at any time. Say, hey, you now work for the White House, and now you have an in there, right? These people go back. So I think 3 or 4 of the staffers I work with in Gates' office are now in senior positions in DoD, appointed.
So they're like the gatekeepers to all things.
Yeah, that's that staff. Those staffers are the gatekeepers for sure.
So you heard it here first. Brandon Temple, TACP officer, member of the deep state. Awesome. Moving forward.
Also cut TACP 50%. He was like, we need half the TACPs that we have. It was his fault.
I could. Trent killed Dive and Brandon Temple killed TACP. So
That's
there you go.
old stuff. Yeah,
This is great. I'm gonna love the cuts on this. It's just gonna totally kill me.
Nobody
out
clip
there.
that. Nobody clip that. So, man, like all hard chargers in our career fields, man, it's not just enough for you to be a prior service Mustang, getting towards the end of your career here, reach lieutenant colonel, legislative liaison, having conversations and mano y manos with some of the biggest shot callers. But man, you really leaned in to this spaces that you care about with a couple of nonprofits. I want to start with Hunter 7. Man, we've had Nikki Selby on from Hunter 7 and Chelsea Simone to talk about Hunter 7 and the great work that they do. How did you become involved with Hunter 7?
Well, the executive director is Tim Pachesa, Chachi.
We've had Chachi on.
You know, Chachi's been on.
Browns
he's
fan. Best part about him.
He is a Browns fan.
I know. We talk about it all the time. Chat, you should see our DMs. It's straight up Browns stuff. Love it. Every single time a piece of Browns news comes out, Chachi hits me up. He's like, bro. And I'm just
Did you see this?
Bro. Did you see it? Yeah, I did, unfortunately. It's just a long history of me being disappointed in Cleveland sports.
That's right. He's a TACP, and we served together in Korea in 2002 for a year, and we've been friends ever since. So through my work on the Hill and other nonprofits, he approached me and asked if I would be interested in being on the advisory board for Hunter 7, which I enthusiastically agreed to. I thought that was fantastic because it's something that affects our generation of warfighters, maybe more than, the mental health side of the house for sure, but on the physical side of the house, this is probably the biggest fight that affects the most people, right? There's people who physically lost limbs, eyesight, etc., different types of injuries in the global war on terror. But this is something that could affect everybody, regardless of, if you're actually injured in combat or not. It's these exposures to toxins that we were all exposed to during the global war on terrorism. And I think the number is like 1 in 7 post-GWOT vets will develop cancer. Not only develop it, but develop it like 30 years earlier than the general population. So I encourage everybody to get tested, even if it's not through Hunter 7. But Hunter 7, what they're doing is they're going out and they're getting people tested. And Chachi said it best. He said, if you have a mailbox, we can get you a test. So they have the means to send that out to people, to your home. They have a means to take blood and send it back and be screened to 20 to 25 different markers for early onset cancer detection. And I had my screening and I was happy to get it back clean. But this is something that's going to be an annual thing for me going forward. For sure.
Yeah. Well, and, some stuff that we learned, for those prior podcasts with, Chachi and Nikki and Chelsea is that the Air Force Special Operations community is leading the way, unfortunately, in these aggressive cancers that end up killing people. And it's because we work around JP8, we work around burn pits, we work around all these caustic chemicals. And to put a little sense of urgency on it, I made the joke with Tara, like my wife Tara, that I'm going to like 3 or 4 retirement ceremonies, right? Went to one last week. I'm going to one, next week down in San Antonio. Good friend Stowe is retiring. I'm going to another one here at the end of the month. These cancers, these diagnoses, they're going to start happening a lot more because that GWOT generation is now getting out, and it's when these cancers present themselves. So the necessary testing and getting ahead of this stuff, it's really starting to be a big deal. And it's starting to be a big deal because you've had these people that have been exposed for 20 years of GWOT to everything from depleted uranium to burn pits to jet fuel to all of these crazy chemicals. When you talk about PJs that showed up to burning aircraft and all the crap that burning aircraft kicks off, just aircraft in general are just carcinogens that can fly. So, the sense of urgency here and what Hunter 7 is doing with awareness and getting people early testing, I can't stress it enough, especially if you're in the Air Force, man. You have to go and get yourself tested.
I talking to a buddy at Soft Week who's another 17th guy, a guy I went to tech school with, and he ended up going to the 17th as well. And he relayed a story that him and 10 guys during the initial invasion of Afghanistan went through K2 in Uzbekistan. And they were there basing out of there for a while. And of those 10 guys that he was there with that team, 6 of them are dead of cancer.
Whoa. They had like stuff oozing up out of the ground
Just
at K2
everywhere.
Like
K2 is horrible.
Disgusting.
And here's the other point I want to make on this, though, and this is something that I've been really trying to bring to Hunter 7 and to expand this, because we focus a lot on the veteran population. But I'm active duty, right? I came in before 9/11. I was there. I've been there through the entirety of the GWOT. And there's other folks that are still in that have deployed multiple times. 2008. There's people that are still in that have fought in the GWOT and have been exposed to these things. When I go to my annual PHA, I get asked, were you exposed to burn pits? Yes. Are you on the burn pit registry? Yes. Then they move on.
Right. It's a notation. Yeah,
it's a notation.
He's good to go. Yeah.
Right. And what I want to change, what I want the DoD to change, and this is, I had the opportunity to talk to the Secretary of the Army really quickly about this at Pastrana Land during Memorial Day weekend. He was getting his blood drawn from Hunter 7. So he's an Army veteran, leading from the front, getting his cancer screening. He sits down in front of me, target of opportunity. And I told him the story. And what I told him was, if I told them that I had a family history of colon cancer or whatever cancer it is, they would alter their testing protocols on me, right? Because we don't get like a colonoscopy till you're after 45, unless you have a history of your family getting it early onset. I want the same thing to happen in the DoD. They should not just be asking me, were you exposed to burn pits? They should know, looking at my file, oh, this guy was in Balad 5 times. He was in Bagram. He was in K2.
Quit saying places I went to. Quit it.
That's what I'm saying.
I'm 45. You keep bringing up these places where I've spent time, dude. Come on. I don't need this in my life.
And that's why I need to go get tested. Everybody, they should know that, though. They should know my deployment history is just as important as my family history.
Yeah.
Right.
Dude,
and that should drive the medical community amongst the active duty to say, okay, yes, this person's not 45 yet, but he has a history of these deployments in these locations. He's been exposed, and we're going to alter our protocols accordingly. And that's just not how it's done right now.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because we know a combat control chief who, if they'd done the correct testing years prior while he was still active duty, because I was going to ask you, like, what if you're still on active duty question, they should have caught this stuff years in advance, but they're not testing for the right things. They should have seen the markers in his blood. And he retired, and it was what, a year after he got out? And then they finally found it, but it was too late, and he ended up passing away. Like, this is serious stuff. Like, my wife and I got out, and of course, the first thing we ran to was like real doctors. We're like, give me the full blood panel, because like I want to know, because the Air Force folks won't tell me. And I go in for my tests, and I'm like, I want to get tested for everything. They're like, yeah, but like your cholesterol's pretty good. So
well, your vitamin D is fine. Like, what else do you want to get tested for, bro?
It's a lipids panel is essentially what they're doing. They're looking for heart disease risks. Which is fine. We need that too, because it is the leading cause of death in America. That's a different story. But
all the white monster keeps that at bay. It's the cancer I'm worried about.
My heart is so strong thanks to the 1,200 milligrams of caffeine I ingest every day.
The heart is a muscle, and you're making it beat more than the average muscle. Right. So your heart's probably just busting out of your chest.
It's so good. Out of this beefy,
you got like a third
chest of mine.
You got like a third pet coming out, because that heart's just trying to beat through. It's on so much monsters. It pumped itself.
I immediately
into
went
oblivion.
to Total Recall there for whatever reason. So I'm just gonna.
Good. Man, that's good.
Enough.
You've dated yourself.
I did. Yeah, it'll go over the kid's head, so don't worry about it.
You make me want to have 3 hands. That's the quote from the time on Total Recall.
This is the best episode we've ever recorded. This is going to do 2 million views. I can't understand.
Total Recall reference Challenger.
Absolutely, you got it.
This stuff is serious, though, right? Like, and then the military not understanding what's happening and not being willing to look at a certain group of people. And it's not just AFSPECWAR folks that went to all these places. This is tons of air crew. This, I'm married to a retired personnelist, and she went to a bunch of these places. So this is everybody that's been to those locations. Like, there should be something in your medical record that says I've been here, here, and here. And that's where they start, but that's not where they should end, right? Just on the cancer screenings and all that other stuff. Like, what's all the other things that we should be looking at for folks that have been overseas and experienced all these things?
It's the knowledge that you're at risk is the first thing, because once you know what you're at risk for, if you want to take the power to advocate for yourself, that's the best place to start. You can go into your doctor's office at your local med clinic and have the information in front of you and say, hey, I've been at these places. It might not say in your little chart there, your little checklist on my PHA that I have to do these things. They might not be the typical indications and warnings that you would send somebody for a referral to get testing, but I'm telling you, I have, and you can at least start having that conversation. If you don't know that you're at risk, then you don't know to have a conversation. So I think that's the first part of it. And you're right. It's not just AFSPECWAR people who are running in the muck in combat. I know that there's a problem, or at least I've heard there's a problem, because Congress is asking the Air Force about it amongst missileers. They asked the Air Force to provide a report on missileers in the National Defense Authorization Act a couple years back because of the things that they're exposed to down in their bunkers and the types of comms equipment and munitions that are around. So it's knowing that it's a risk factor. No matter what job you have, you got to look at what your jobs are and what your exposures are, and then advocate for yourself.
The first time,
yeah, but how do I know where to start? Sorry,
hold on, Trent. The first time that I know I texted you a different thing. Just shut up. People can't see what we're texting on the backside. We'll get to it in a second. Trent.
Don't tell me to do something, then interrupt me while I'm doing the thing, Aaron.
I have to talk. It's my thing on the podcast.
You're like
Disrespect
a crow. You're like
guest.
a crow that's like, I'm in charge. I have to talk.
Okay, that is absolutely too far.
Wow.
Okay, that was hurtful. We're going to address that later.
Sorry,
all right? Trent, that is a boundary, and that triggers me. The first time that I ever heard, especially the missileers, and I'm glad that they're looking at the missileers. I was in NCOA with some folks, and a guy just anecdotally was like, "Oh yeah, man, go to Minot, have girls." And I was like, what are you talking about? They were like, no, dude, being around the missiles, being around the nukes, being around those areas. He was like, there was a time in our flight where we had 74 children or something, amongst the entire whatever. And there was 68 girls. They were like, it just is. You can't imagine, again, I can't correlate or causate any of that information, but I can go, hey, there's something going on that's affecting these things. Maybe we should look a little bit deeper for some possible health concerns. I'm sorry, Trent, proceed.
Trent, to your question about where should they start?
Where should they get back to Hunter 7? Yeah, where should they start? Where do I go?
Hunter 7, www.hunter7.org is where you start. You go on that webpage. It's got all the information's on there, how you can support and how you can start advocating for yourself. And you can see it up on your screen there now. And the data's there. And the people who are at Hunter 7, I did my first event with them down in Soft Week, event together where I actually participated. And then, we're talking about people who are so passionate about this mission, right? They are fighters down there. And you talk to Chelsea, so Chelsea's a fighter. Matter of fact, she's getting ready to do haymakers for. It's eluding my mind right now. She's actually doing a fundraiser shortly where she's going to be boxing to raise money. It's called haymakers for healing or something like that.
Just only overhand rights because they're haymakers.
That's it.
There's no jabs. It's just
they don't care what jabs. They want the big show. They want the heavy knockout quick. Yeah, I would go to Hunter 7, start educating yourself on that if you're a veteran or if you're active duty, and then start advocating for yourself when you're going to your VA appointments or you're going to your local doctor, or if you're active duty and you're at your PHA, bring it up, write it down, start getting it documented that you want treatment, you want to get those tests done. And I think if you have those proper conversations with your flight doc or whoever your doc is, I think, at the end of the day, I think they're going to do the right thing and get you the test you need.
Maybe. Yeah.
If not, like I said, though, you go to hunter7.org, and if you have a mailbox, they can get you a test. There's a form on there you can fill out, and you can talk about what services you need, and they will mail you that test, and you can have it done outside of the military, which is what I did.
Right. No, that's awesome. And beyond that, Brandon, we're kind of going over time and all this other stuff when we're sensitive to it. But what are the other things that you're involved in? Because it seems like you were like, man, I got 10 extra minutes in the day. I'm going to get involved in more things because I'm that kind of psychopath.
Yeah, it's a lot of veterans work is what I've been. I started out as we started a Veterans Affairs Commission here in Calvert County, Maryland, where I live, or the county established one, and I ended up being a plank owner in that. I wanted to join and help veterans and military families in my community, and I chair that commission now. So it started there, and it started expanding out of there, working with the state of Maryland. And then another one of my ranger buddies, a guy named Timothy Tito Torres, was the CEO of a nonprofit called Moral Compass Federation. And this kind of rose out of the ashes of Afghanistan and the withdrawal there. And they found that they were, a lot of these guys and gals were aching inside because of what was going on. They were watching this unfold on their TV, just in disgust. And we're realizing that these people that they fought and bled with were just being left behind to the mercy of the Taliban. So the people who formed Moral Compass Federation were really the informal networks that were working, like Pineapple Express, to get people out that the military wasn't doing at the time. And as we're getting away from Afghanistan, and that's kind of, in our rearview mirror, and that those windows for getting people out of Afghanistan are closing, we've noticed that this has been a way for people's moral injury to heal. And Moral Compass Federation is leading the charge on education and advocacy for moral injury. And moral injury is what we call the third leg of the hidden wound triad. Everybody knows post-traumatic stress. Everybody knows traumatic brain injury, moral injury, less so. I put out a video. Here's how I put it out in the video not too long ago, but here's how I explain it to people just as simply as I can. PTS is a injury of the mind. TBI is a physical injury of the brain. And moral injury is an injury of the heart and soul. And when I put that video out, I had buddies messaging my inbox like, hey, I never had a word for why I felt like shit until I saw your video. And one of the main causes of this is that, feelings of betrayal or loss of confidence in institutions, right? Things that challenge your moral compass, your value system. And in the military, we're taught we're not going to leave anybody behind. That's something that's, pounded in our head, especially on the special operations side. And when we were leaving folks in Afghanistan, that caused a deep wound in folks. And unfortunately, I just heard a story the other day about another guy who works at a veterans nonprofit who relayed a story about a friend of his committed suicide right after the withdrawal of Afghanistan because he just couldn't reconcile the time spent there, the blood and treasure, and then just abandoning all the people that he'd worked for and worked with and fought with. And that's a moral injury. It's not a traumatic event that caused that. It wasn't a sense of impending doom or, some other life threatening experience. It was that loss of confidence and that feeling of betrayal that leads to moral injury. And there's other ways that it could happen as well. I mean, acts of omission. If you see something happening, you don't do anything about it, something that violates your moral code, or you end up participating in something. And then in hindsight saying, how did I find myself there? We like to focus in on the systems institution part of it too, but a bad or a certain trigger pull can cause it as well.
I still feel bad because I wasn't able to stop Peaches from becoming a patch.
You knew in your
deep in your heart
for too long. Yeah, you knew deep in your heart that he was doing something that was going to violate his moral code, and you couldn't stop him. That's an act of omission.
We all knew it. An ongoing moral injury of mine.
So serious. I love it. Great. Well, Brandon, sir, appreciate you joining us. Thanks for everything that you have done for the U.S. TACP community, small part of the naval community, hot bunking with all those dudes, and then everything that you've done up on the Hill. So thanks for continuing to serve, and congratulations on when you do finally retire.
I appreciate that, and I love that in my list of accomplishments, hot bunking with dudes is amongst them. So
it was number one.
Hey, I don't want to shortchange you.
You guys really do a good job here of just like highlighting the best parts of a person's career.
Yeah,
we'll make sure Hunter 7 and Moral Compass Foundation, that's moralcompassfoundation.org or Federation. Sorry, we'll make sure that those are both in the show notes. We'll make sure to get some promo out for them. And we'll make sure that we point people to the right way. We're huge fans and supporters of Hunter 7 and everything that you're doing over there. Glad to see that the Moral Compass Federation is off and kicking. So good work.
Appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
All right, everybody. Don't forget to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, leave us a review, and then go over to onesready.com, grab yourself a piece of merch. And we are also doing Operator Training Summit in Nashville, 25-26 October. We'll see you out there. Light up.
Later.
Later.
Late.